throughout River Park are organized, and that's the next item on the agenda. The only projector that's working is Officer McAlpine's, so we're going to skip it this time, but I'll bring them next time, and I may just go ahead and post some of the visuals associated with it on our Facebook page, perhaps on Nextdoor. But someone at one of our last meetings had asked for some explanation associated with who does what in the River Park area, so that residents know. And so there are a couple of organizations that people need to keep in mind, particularly since we still have people that are moving in with the new construction and stuff like that. So some of this is going to be familiar, and so if you already know all this stuff, fantastic. And you can ignore me until Sandra Burkhart comes up next. But something to keep in mind, the neighborhood council is just a group of volunteers. We have an election once a year. The election for this year is going to be at our November meeting, which is coming up. So we really hope that some people are interested in volunteering and being a part of it, both as board members, and then we can, if we ask for volunteers, we're always looking for some additional assistance on doing different things. So the neighborhood council, though, is primarily meant to represent and be an advocate for the neighborhood. And so one of the major roles tends to be communicating with City of Oxnard agencies and City of Oxnard council members. All right, so the people that are staff and doing the work, and the council members are the one who are deciding what the staff do. And so, for example, the neighborhood council sends a letter on behalf of the neighborhood to the city council that asks them to get on the ball about fixing the fountain because it seemed like it had been dragging on forever. And then also sent another one on reminding them that we needed some action on the dog park. So that was done in mid to late spring of last year. And so those are some of the actions that we just said. Send it out to all the neighborhood, send it out to all the city council members and the city manager and ask them to take action. So that's really what that is intended to be. The neighborhood council does not have any funds, does not have any facilities that can take care of it. It does administer a couple of Facebook pages, so the Residents and Homeowners Facebook page and the Neighborhood Watch Facebook page that are both closed groups. There are admins that are council members that help manage that. Typically we stay out of it for the most part and let people talk to each other. However, there are things like the approvals that need to be done, and occasionally if people start getting abusive on there, then the neighborhood council members will manage that. So those are some of the things that council members do. Other things to keep in mind, there's the Master HOA. The Master HOA is managing all the things that are community-wide. So they are not responsible for hiring the ground crews that mow your individual lawn if you're part of an HOA and maybe just your block is being mowed, but they are responsible for the landscaping that is in the medians. They're responsible for the mailboxes that go throughout the community, things that are community-wide for all of River Park. Then there are local HOAs. I don't know about everybody else, but mine gets called a DSA in some of the correspondence that I get. And so if you and your closest neighbors, if you're in single-family homes, or if you're in a condo complex or perhaps an apartment complex, and you have an HOA associated with that that just does the things for your facilities, then those are going to be your local HOA. So they're not the community-wide ones, they're the other things that the HOA is doing, so it's stuff that are more local to your buildings and your facilities. And then the last part is the city. So the city is doing certain things, so they're going to be in control, eventually they'll be in control of the streets, although the community-wide or master HOA is currently managing those until all the construction and all the other stuff is done, and at that point the streets will be transitioned over to the city. The city also does things like park maintenance and other things, and we are kind of a special case for the city that we're called a special district. So the city gets money from residents here, and Sandra's going to talk about exactly how that happens, and then those go into a fund that is designated for River Park, or actually a couple of funds. But so that's something that the city handles, some of those facilities, and that's what those funds do. And then in addition to that, all the other city services that we get, typical sewer, water, utilities, those sorts of things. Those are all city programs. And so those are important to keep in mind when you have a problem or see something. There, for example, there's the Oxnard 311 app, which I really strongly encourage people to use. I know that a number of people do. That's how you report issues. If you see water running out into the street, you can use that. But it only works if that is a city water issue. If it is something related to an HOA, then the city will likely let you know it's not a city thing, but you should contact the HOA or whomever. So that's it. Does anyone have questions, or does anyone think that I didn't capture any of that very clearly?
How exactly do you contact the HOA, the master HOA, or your local HOA? I don't really have those connections. Would I do this email here?
No, that's all neighborhood council. Your HOA, do you have a condominium or a home?
I rent a
single
home.
family. Pardon?
I rent a bedroom in the home. I'm like a tenant in one of the houses. It's like
Okay, so that would be the master association. I can give you the contact information. It's Raymond Howard, it's part of the management trust. And I can give you his email address and his phone number.
Any other questions? If not, we're going to move on. We're going to start, we mentioned before, we have comment cards. So if anyone else notes that they're going to ask a question, you don't have to write it down, just put your name on it, stick you in the list. We're just trying that as a different way of asking questions to keep everyone in order. The other thing I actually wanted to say, Sandra's presentation component is pretty short, partially because we don't have a screen or projector for her tonight. But please let her get all the way through her presentation and what she wants to talk about, just so that perhaps she can answer your question before you ask it. And then at the end, we can ask all the questions that we need to. Does that sound okay to everybody?
Thank you for having me. This is definitely the biggest group I've met with since I've been in the city. So I've been in the city about a year now, and just to give you a little bit of background on kind of where we're at with our districts. The city's been managing special assessment districts for a long time now, and we've had a total of 63 districts over time, a combination of LMDs, MADs, and CFDs, which are just different acronyms for how districts are formed. You guys are all in a CFD. And so basically the difference between the different districts is how you're taxed, but it's a similar process that everyone's taxed on their property tax bills, and then the money comes into the city through the county, and then it's our job to administer those funds based upon whatever the formation documents tell us to do with regards to the district. And since you all are in a CFD, and in River Park in particular, it's essentially everything but the kitchen sink that's in the documents that form River Park as far as what it pays for or what it can pay for. So we formed a special districts division back in July, beginning of July of this year, because we really saw that the management of the districts was not happening the way we wanted it to at the city's level. And it needed to be a dedicated division, we needed to have dedicated staff, we needed to have dedicated processes in place. So I was brought on about a year ago to sort of work through making that happen. And I'm just finished building my team. As of this week, Monday, we have our project manager in place. And so River Park has been kind of on an island by itself for a long time now. You guys have been managed under Parks. We've had Dean Yamamoto, who's been the dedicated individual for the city for many years. You've also had a dedicated city crew that's been running everything out here, which is unusual. We don't do that in our other districts. All of our other districts, for the most part, are maintained by contractors. So one of the things that I was tasked with once we started transitioning all of this is that River Park was going to move away from city crew and move to contracts. Simply because it's easier for us as the city to manage contracts, to terminate, to do what needs to be done, to set metrics and bars, and we can cite the contractor if the work's not being performed. It's easier for us to do. So we're in the process of doing that right now. Unfortunately, Dean was supposed to be here until hopefully the end of the year to transition me into the position and to take over River Park, but he left somewhat suddenly last week. And so, yeah, he left on Thursday, it was his last day. It's okay though, I've been getting up to speed for a while now, and two of his key people I actually hired into the division before he left, so we'll get up to speed, we'll be fine. And I did want to let you know kind of where we're at in the transition, because I've been focused more on the financial and contract side of things. And we just finalized our first contract, which is with a company called Brightview Landscaping, and they're going to be taking over the maintenance of the softball fields. And so I'm taking that item to council on October 3rd, and assuming I get council approval, which I'm sure that I will, they will actually be taking over the maintenance as of October 4th. So they'll start us through this first season, and I've got them on an almost 3-year contract for that. We also have a contract with West Coast Arborist, who's going to be handling exclusively all the trees, trimming of the trees, replanting of the trees, ripping out trees, that sort of thing. And then the final contract, which is yet to be done, is the big one for me, and that's the landscaping contract. So that's for everything else, the park maintenance, the lawn mowing and edging, weed abatement, gopher control, all that sort of thing. And what I'm thinking about doing, and I haven't decided yet, is I might be separating out the janitorial side of the landscaping, because you guys have multiple bathrooms and you have some electrical, plumbing, some of the types of things that a landscaper would not typically do. So we're working on potentially writing out a separate scope and having a company that just does that for you guys, for our Seabridge CFD, and for our Westport CFD. Because you guys all have parks, you all have bathrooms, you all have certain types of maintenance that isn't necessarily what we would call landscaping. So we're really trying to focus in to get better pricing if we can find the right companies to do the right kind of work. And so that's where we're at, and all of this will be done, believe it or not, by the end of the year. That was our commitment to the city managers, that we'll have all city staff off property by the end of the year, and everything will be on contract. So we do have someone right now who is managing the city crew, and his name's Sergio Cervantes. He's new, he's only been doing it here for, I think, maybe a month, but he comes to us with a lot of experience. He's been running the L&D crew and everything out in the other districts for quite a while, and so we moved him over because, again, during this transition, we wanted to have somebody on site full-time that could really make sure the supervision of the staff was taking place while we transition. So he couldn't make it tonight, but he is overseeing, he's getting up to speed on the property, the irrigation systems, all the things, the complexities of River Park that we are facing right now, because you guys are definitely a very complicated project for us compared to some of the other CFDs that we have. But that's kind of where we're at on things right now. I do want to also mention, Clay mentioned 311. I've noticed an increase in activity, so I think that probably it's getting out that we have this system. I love it because it sends us an email right away and tells us what the problem is. It also sets up a log system, a ticket system on our side. We have service level standards that we have to meet, and if we don't complete tickets within a certain amount of time, it goes up to our city manager, so it's a good way to keep all of us accountable. So I do want to highly recommend that you all check that out, and when you see something, please feel free to report it. And you can always call us, but I like having a ticket, because if you call me, I'm going to put it in anyways, because it's a good way for us to route our tickets, to make sure we're getting it done, to keep track of everything. And I know for me, that's my big thing, is the complaints I've heard since I got here is lack of follow-through, lack of response, broken promises, things of that sort. And so I feel like for us, we need to be as transparent as we can be and make sure we're putting the information out there, we're creating the tickets. If you're submitting it, it actually has an email track there that every time we go into that ticket and we update the progress, or we put a comment about what's happening on that item, it sends an email to you as well. So it lets you know what's going on with the ticket. Is it in progress? Is anybody looking at it? Have they even opened the ticket yet? So again, it's a great two-way street of accountability, and for me, I just appreciate it because I'm not here all the time, so it's a good way for me to know what's going on. So I'm going to look at my notes. I don't want to talk too long because I do want to allow you guys to have time to ask questions and let me know what's going on out there in the field. Looks like I covered everything I wanted to cover. Does anybody want me to cover some of the sort of what your money's spent on, or I do have, okay. Okay, great. So Clayton and I, we're going to be working on a document. We started working on a document now that basically I've tried to take the very complicated financial spreadsheets the city has and sort of dummy them down a little bit so that they're easier to understand how the money's being spent. And what I want to do, and I was telling Clay, I'm putting this together for our other two CFDs as well, Seabridge and Westport, is have a document that I can get to you guys maybe quarterly that provides you an update on kind of how's the money being spent, where are you guys at on your budget for the year. So the money comes in. Your levy, the levies are determined every single year based upon what the estimate is for all these different costs. You've got basic costs like your utilities. I can tell you water for you guys runs $400,000 to $500,000 a year for your water cost. You guys have the fire station, which is probably your largest ticket item all by itself. It's about $1.6 million a year to run your fire station. The city crew component, the staff labor component over the years has been a good $1 million a year for that. the contract side, so West Coast Arborist has been doing contracting with you guys for a while now, I believe, and just looking at things, it looks like you've had some city core contracts, things of that sort. Those have been running you a couple $100,000 a year at least, year in, year out. So really those are probably your big ticket items, what you spend on, in addition to, like he was talking about, sewer, water, all these other things, but those are probably some of your larger ticket items. And so moving into the next year, what you're gonna see is the shift of the city crew component into the contract line item. But my goal is to actually reduce. I think we'll be able to save money by moving away from city crew because you guys are paying for a government employee, and that's a fully loaded staff cost. So it's expensive. Even if you've got the lowest level person at, say, $40,000 a year, depending upon how long you've been with the city, there's a fully burdened cost associated with that. So it could be a $40,000 a year employee, but you're paying another 40 to 50% markup because of all the fully burdened insurance and benefits and all the good stuff that comes with it. So what we're finding is that when we're moving to a contract, there should be a cost savings there. So I'm hoping to get that number down a little bit for you guys in the coming year. So those are kind of the big ticket items. And like I said, I would like to finish getting this financial document. And I'm open to feedback if you guys, if it's not working or it doesn't make sense, but I'd like to be able to get something to Clay quarterly that just kind of lets you know this is the budget for the year, this is where we are, this is where we're headed. And actually, you give me a couple months when we get the contracts in place, I'm going to be doing an adjustment to your budget because the line items are not set up right now according to what's going to happen with the contracts. We've got line items for staff, and that's not, we're not going to have staff line items anymore, so I've got to shift some things around. But does that kind of answer a little bit on the financials, or more questions? Anything maybe more specific that I can?
We've got a number of speakers that are ready to ask.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Did you give me a card?
I put the card there.
You did? Okay.
Okay. I
And
got it.
we'll get to, but let's, Judy, go ahead and start reading off the names.
This is from Felix.
Felix, did you want to ask a question?
He wrote it down, so I can. Where is the
Microphone.
unused Melrose money, mainly the money for the Parks Department?
So there's a surplus. Okay, so the question was about
Microphone.
when you get levied every year, you have a budget, and then your levy is set based upon the budget. And if we don't hit the budget, either going over or under, his question is what happens to the money. So in the case of River Park, what I can tell historically is that you guys have not been over budget from what I can see. You're under budget every single year. And so what that does is it goes into your what's called surplus fund balance, and it just sits there. And so you guys have a fairly large surplus fund balance right now. What I was told as to why that is because of the building of the maintenance yard that still has to be constructed, the dog park, some things like that. But so this is something that I need to look at in the next year because I would like to see why the surplus fund balance is as large as it is, and does it actually need to be that large? Because what we do is we do a reserve study periodically. Reserve study tells us how much do we need to keep on reserve. So as an example, Westport, I think we keep about $2 million on reserve for them, and that's tied very specifically to dredging costs and certain things that we need to have money for. So every year when we finish the budget and we balance everything out, if they're under budget, then we give them what's called a levy credit. So they pay a little bit less than their levy next year because they overpaid. If they underpaid and the budget was over, then we'll end up either having to charge a little bit more the next year, or we'll look at the budget, is there anywhere we can tighten down? But what I can tell from River Park is it doesn't appear that it's really been working that way over the years. It kind of seems like there's been a status quo budget year after year after year, and I'm not sure why that is, so that's something that I'm planning to kind of wrench down and figure out what are the true numbers, the true costs of things, versus just kind of keeping a rolling number every year, so. Sorry, there's been a lot of, there's been, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, there's been a lot of things that, and it's, I don't know that I can blame anybody, but there's been a lot of things that haven't made a lot of sense over the years, and it's just been, I think, a lack of management and a lack of true focus on the districts as a whole, and looking at it as more of, okay, we need to look realistically every single year, and especially in a place like River Park where you're continuing to develop, things are constantly changing every single year. You've got, you know, a dog park that's coming online. You've got a fountain that might need to be replaced. There's certain things you need to be looking at, and on a long-term forecasting budget, you've got to look at your capital improvement areas And you need to figure every 10 years, we need to replace fences, and after so many years, this is gonna break down, and we need to budget for that. So there's a lot of things that really haven't happened, and that's part of my plan, and what I'm working on now is to try to develop some of these long-term strategies and figure out, where we're headed, and what do we really need, and let's not save money if we don't need to save the money. Let's give levy credits and get you guys kind of back to where it makes sense from year to year, because you guys pay a lot, and we don't need to be keeping your money unless there's a reason for it.
Felix, did that answer your other two questions?
Probably.
You asked about the Parks
Probably
Department.
everywhere
You
else.
said the Parks Department being understaffed, that you talked about it, we're
Yeah.
going to outsource, and you get your Melrose money back that they don't need as much
Yes.
to address. Okay. Jean, you're next.
All right. So, quick comment on the Oxnard 311, going back earlier. If you just if you go to the app, you take a snapshot, it actually gets your location out to the police. So if there's graffiti or a big rig or something like that, all you need to do is take a picture. It sends in, it's a beautiful thing. Hi, I'm glad to hear that there's going to be some accountability and hopefully transparency on these issues. About how much a year is collected on the CFD?
$5 million.
$5 million a year, right? And there's and that's been maybe, 7 years or something? So that's maybe $30 million or something like that. So there's really no way to go back forensically, as you can tell, to see, what's happened.
So
Is that a long-term
this would be my challenge that I've seen with the CFDs, because those are the ones where we're collecting the most money. The challenge is where I would call the admin and the overhead and some of those charges, how those have been calculated over the years. That's a tough one to really figure out, and that's an area, that's why we're moving away from that now, and we're really focusing on contracts, because it's harder to track. You may have someone being charged somewhere, but are they actually spending their time there? Are they getting pulled off to do something else? Dean's a perfect example of that. Dean was focused on River Park, and then in June, we lost our park supervisor, and Dean got pulled from River Park to work in parks directly. And
Right, no one asked us.
right, and no one asked me, and so I found out about it a few weeks after it happened, and they said, well, wait a second, if you're not going to be in River Park, then you don't get paid out of River Park. So we had to process paperwork to get it shifted. So those are the types of things that I don't have a way to know that for sure, so it's easier to not have a bunch of city staff, because especially if their boss is not me, and their boss calls them and says, hey, I need you to go to College Park and do this job today, they're not going to say no, but they don't realize the financial accountability that goes with that. You can't pull somebody off when their salary is being paid out of River Park. They need to be living on River Park. They never leave River Park. That's how it should be. So that's why we just couldn't make that happen. I tried for about 4 months, and it wasn't possible, because these are parks staff being run by a parks manager, and I'm a financial person. I can't tell him what to do.
Right, and it appears that the number of personnel that we've been paying for parks is nowhere near what was budgeted. So the question is, did we pay for salaries to people that didn't do any work, or what, that's a big number. I think that would wind up being a big number.
Yeah.
Now, as far as the CFD goes, is the specific language, is that something we can get? Can we just, how do we do that? How do I go about?
Well, I can send it to you. I have the document. I had to dig through and find it too, because I wanted to know for my own education what's involved in River Park. And there's some specific documents that outline what's covered, and it's a lot. It's a very wide open description of what's covered by your CFD. So even if you wanted to build a museum or a library here, apparently that would be covered under your CFD.
No, there's no such thing in California as a new CFD, right? They don't.
Oh yeah, no, there is.
Oh, they're still doing them?
I got 2 coming online. I've got one in the next year and another one trying to come online, yeah.
Fantastic. So your goal is transparency?
Absolutely, yeah. We don't need to hide behind anything here. I mean, I've seen some of the stuff that's happened, and I don't know who's to blame, but, I'm here to fix it. That's my job, and I was given this new position so that I could come in and create the division, develop the system, make sure that we're doing things where we're supposed to be doing it, and that's why I'm here tonight, and I want to keep coming back and provide you guys with financials and whatever you need, because I feel like we need to gain back the trust of our citizens so they know that the money's being spent the way it's supposed to be spent.
So how do I get in touch with you to get a copy of the CFD?
So my email, if you want to write it down, and I'm sorry I should have brought business cards, but we moved today and it was crazy, but it's Sandra, Sandra, dot Burkhart, Burkhart, at oxnard.org.
Next question, Sarah?
I know that a lot of the other CFDs or districts have on the City of Oxnard page maintenance schedules and stuff that they can really see what's going
Yep.
on. I've not been able to find them.
Right, because you guys, that's why I said you've been kind of in an island by yourself. I've spent a ton of time in all the other areas because that's what I was brought on to do. And then the decision was made that River Park needed to be brought into the family, so to speak, in June. But the problem was we weren't ready to do it yet. We had to transition over a period of time. So the goal was to transition by December. And so you guys are going to be brought into the fold on all of this. You'll have regular inspection schedules, things will be posted online. The contractors will be held accountable to the standards. We have a new contract that every other district's on except for you guys and actually the two CFDs right now. That, yeah, we're getting there. So, but you're right, you guys don't have your dedicated page yet.
Thank you.
I have it. Terry Ann or Robert Villegas?
That's us. I have a question on how the dog park is coming along.
Dog park, yeah, the meeting I wasn't invited to the other day. I was just gonna say, I know Judy got invited to the meeting. I didn't get invited to the meeting. I got an email afterwards when I found out there was a meeting I wasn't invited to.
Sorry, it wasn't my meeting.
It's not, it's okay.
And Judy is going to report on her experience, but Sandra, if you want to talk about what you got in your email, that would be great.
So I got an email from Kevin Turley after I found out about this meeting, and he said that they had a kickoff construction meeting, and that basically scheduling was one of the biggest concerns that was brought up by people, and that some material, such as the fencing, requires a lead time, that once it's ordered, it could take about 5 weeks for delivery. So there was talk about grading, sod replacement, tree planting, and the forming of the concrete areas to be performed before the fencing was installed. He said that they're looking for confirmation from the general contractor CS Legacy to provide a construction schedule starting September 18th. We have not provided exact dates until the contractor confirms the schedule. And then he just put a little, this is like a good project, it would be a valuable asset to this park and the whole community.
We didn't want to get your expectations too high by saying they're going to start on this day because, you know, it's a contract. But the outside goal is December 1st. That's an outside for completion.
To start?
To complete. He doesn't
This
want
year?
Yeah. The problem is the 5 weeks to get the fencing. So I said, you got to do something while we're waiting. The 5 weeks are going to go crazy. So that's why they're going to start the front part and the lighting and that kind of thing. Okay? Robert?
Do we ask it or? I just want to know how wagon wheel is going to affect our CFD, if it's going to be set up the same, if it's going to be, you know, same structure, how that works.
So it is, wagon wheel is going to be a CFD, but the actual formation part of it is still being worked out. But yeah, it'll be very similar to River Park.
Okay, but completely separate though. No thing. But the school district and other things that go into ours they're going to be part of this district, right? So
I would think so, because
doesn't part of our CFD pay for the construction of school facilities?
No.
Well,
No.
it did pay in the beginning.
That's a separate mellow ruse. We have two mellow ruses. One is for
Bonded, right.
and the other is for the
Freeway.
for the school.
You have what's called a bond, I should have mentioned this earlier. You have what's called a bonded and a non-bonded. And so what he's talking about is the bonded side.
Oh, okay.
And so you have two line items, and then the other one's the non-bonded, which is your maintenance and all the things that I've been talking about. The bonded is something that's tied to a bond. It's a 30-year bond, you can pay it off. Ours is the Melrose that's evergreen, it never goes away.
Okay. And they're
Sorry.
roughly equivalent size? I don't even know.
I don't think they're the same, but I don't know off the top of my head what I mean, it kind of depends, because each parcel is based upon the size of the parcel as far as what you get charged. So a single-family home is going to be charged more than a tiny little condo.
No, but in proportion. All right, thank you.
The other Robert?
It's really okay. I think you've already answered my question. Well, I actually had other questions, but I don't think you're the right person to ask about that. But the question really was, how can we make sure that funding for CFD number 5, which is the one that covers our maintenance and our schools, everything else, and I guess you've already told us that you're doing certain things, that money is not going to be diverted, and it's not necessarily that money is being diverted, but it was resources that have been reallocated elsewhere and probably not accounted for. So how do we make sure that the people that we contract with, they probably have multiple contracts in Oxnard, Ventura. How do we make sure that they spend the amount of time that they're supposed to here?
That's a great question, and it's something that we've been going around and around on, because we have a service level standard now that we've implemented, and it's basically service levels. So you guys would have an A level, but there's A, B, C, D, F, and it's based upon what can the district afford and what do they want. So the A level of service outlines what that means. So that means they have to be on the property weekly to mow your lawn and edge. They have to, and I'm throwing this out off the top of my head, but aerate annually, dethatch annually, fertilization, I think 4 times a year. They have to do pick up trash weekly. There's all these different metrics, right? Things they have to do. The trees have to be cut to a certain length and height. So that they provide us with a schedule of what day or days they're going to be on property. And I would think with River Park, it's going to be more than 1 day. But all the other districts, they've got a day. And they say we're going to be here on every other Tuesday or every Tuesday. So then our inspectors keep on their schedule that they go out the day after the inspection to make sure the work is performed. Now, we're only doing it once a month right now, though, because that's all we can do with the staff that we have. So in the case of an A-level of service, when you're getting it every single week, we're not going to be able to know every single week, but we will know for the month if things have been done. The goal, though, is for the CFDs to actually move to twice a month inspecting, so that they can be out here more often to make sure stuff's being done. The new contract that we wrote has specific citation metrics in it. So it has a first offense, second offense, third offense, based upon, did you mow and lawn and all that kind of thing. And then what we do when we get the invoice is that we cite them on the invoice. And we have a termination clause now, so if we decide at any point in time for any reason that they're not hitting the metrics we wanted to hit, we fire them and we hire somebody else. So we've got new metrics in place, we've got new things that we're doing now. And this is the kind of stuff we didn't have before.
Right.
The contract didn't even allow us to dock. A contractor, it didn't even say they had to mow the lawn, actually. It's crazy when I look at some of this stuff. It didn't even say you have to mow the lawn every single week. So if they didn't want to mow the lawn, we couldn't actually do anything about it, other than fire them.
You said a lot of things. You didn't really talk about maybe overgrowth in some of the planted areas. I've noticed that there's a lot of planted areas that have a lot of weeds that are just flourishing. And the guys that are there currently, they're just mowing them down and making them part of the lawn. So.
Yeah.
Where it's probation.
Well, so we've got we've got a
We've
combination of staff. So we've got some full-time staff. I think we've got, I believe we have 7 people full-time city staff. I think we've got then like another 9 temps, and then we just started with this probation crew. And the challenge we have is that these are not skilled landscapers that are out there. These are people that have either been trained by somebody else or, because I mean, again, if you're paying them $40,000 a year, you're not going to get that high of a caliber. So I think that's part of the problem we have is that, with our requirement in the contract, we're required a licensed landscaper. So it's a company that knows what they're doing. They're required to have an arborist on their staff, which means they know about trees and things of that sort. They also have to have an irrigation technician. So certain things, we don't have that right now with City Crew, and that's the problem. If there is something wrong, like weeds or whatnot, they don't necessarily know how to treat them properly. And that's why we've got to move away from this and go to a professional company that knows how to do these things. And then if they don't do them to our standards, we can cite and terminate.
One last question. Do we contact you, or do we use the 311 app and
It's
say,
your call.
hey, this isn't being done?
It's your call. It's whatever you're comfortable with. I prefer the 311 just because selfishly it saves me a step because I'm going to put it in otherwise. But we do have a main hotline number for the districts. So if you want to write that down, it's 805-385-7578. and that goes directly into the special districts division. And we have someone that answers the phone there, and she will put the ticket in the 311 and assign it to whoever it needs to go to.
One more time, 385.
7578.
I have one more question from Boomer. Wanted to know, when are the audits of the funds done? How often? How often or where?
Yeah, how often? Because it was really on his question of if there's been mismanagement, how do you know when the audit's done? Do we get reports of the audits back?
So the audits this year are going to be done in, well, they're coming in October, the auditors. But for the types of things that we're talking about, like with staffing, you're not going to find anything like that in an audit. There isn't any way to prove, let's say, that somebody was supposed to be at River Park today and they got pulled to somewhere else.
How is that not being done? I know we have to do it in, I work for, on the base, and we have to account as a contractor. We have to account for every single hour based upon what project we're working on. So why can't that be done in future? Not saying that in the past, but at least have some accountability that we know that the funds that we spend are actually going to go to stuff that helps our area, if that's how you do it.
Yeah, you know, I think one of the things the city could look at is they've got there's programs out there, kind of like Regis Connect and different programs where you can put it into your phone and then you can track where your staff's at and what they're doing at any given time. It's not something the city probably can afford right now, but I think it's something that they could be well served even with the regular park staff to use. What I'm using now in the districts is something called Capture. And it's online, it's an app you can use, and basically I've required my contractors to use it, and I also make my inspectors use it. So when my inspectors go out into the field to do an inspection, they actually do the inspection through the app. They drop pins to say, this looks bad, they take pictures, they say this is deficient, that sort of thing. And then the contractors, when they arrive on site, they're required to check in. So I know that they've been on the property that day. We're waiting to actually go into a new part of that, which would be the work order tracking, so that when the inspector identifies a deficiency and sends it to the contractor, when the contractor goes back out again, they can actually go out, drop the pin, make the repair, take a photo, and send it to us and say, we fixed this item. So on our end, we're using a new program. But again, that's something that I'm doing through the districts, and as far as the city as a whole and how they manage their staff, I can't really speak to that because that's not within my purview. But I'm improving our side of things so that I can show accountability, and I can prove if somebody calls me, if one of you guys call me and say, hey, the contractor wasn't here today, then I'll be able to look on the app and say, actually, they were here at 8:45 this morning. And the app does not allow you to click a check-in unless you're on property. It's GPS located. So you know, there's some cool stuff we're doing on our end, but I can't speak to the entire city.
Well, I ask a question, if Sergio is parks or special district staff?
Sergio has been parks, and I filed the paperwork, so he's supposed to be moved into finance, but it still hasn't happened yet, but he will be officially moving into division.
We'll be on our own.
Well, and then the follow-up to that, is he going to oversee the contractors then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. He's the last person on the team that hasn't been moved into the district yet. But the paperwork was filed weeks ago, it just hasn't happened yet.
I've gone through all the cards. Anybody else have any card questions that they want?
I did want to provide just one quick update on the trees, and also to find out if there's any areas we're missing. We're going to get the tree company out pretty soon because there's some trees that need to be trimmed. There's also a tree that needs to be replaced. I've got the following streets that we are going to be sending them out on, and I apologize if I pronounced them incorrectly. Garon Street, Forest Park Boulevard, Ventura Road, River Park Boulevard, and Moss Landing Drive. These are all areas that were reported to us as being overgrown and need a tree trimming. Is there anywhere else that anybody has issues with streetwise where you'd like them to come out and do some trimming? Or is there a replacement of a tree that needs to be done?
Forest Park?
Forest Park Boulevard? Yep, I got that on my list. The place where I was given the report about a tree that needs to be replaced is at 3411 Kings Canyon Drive. Apparently the tree was taken out and never replaced. Okay. Any other trees that need to be replaced or dying trees that need to be removed?
I'll talk to you afterwards.
Okay.